Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. How you doing? It's Max. Hey. So, the last video I did gained me 8 subscribers within a day of it being posted, which is awesome. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. I don't intend to become the next Jack Edwards, but a man can dream to be a second-rate Cliff Sargent, can't he? So, my face is kind of messed up. I don't know if you can see it properly or not. But the lighting's actually better because I have a window in the roof. So with that, I don't need the light there, but my skin's not, it's a bit, the skin's not great today. So sorry about that. And also I've had a haircut, so I'm trying to style it, see how it looks. So there you go. It's Bret Easton Ellis got a new book out, The Shards. I ordered a signed copy from Waterstones as soon as I could, and it's arrived. So that prompted me to make this video. So why don't I make a video talking about Bret Easton Ellis, the great American author who came to fame in 1985, at the age of 21, published his first book, Lesson Zero, very controversial. Then did American Psycho, even more controversial, famous movie. I like Bret Easton Ellis a lot, one could say. He's probably the writer that got me back into reading after quite a slump. So that's pretty good. And I just thought to do a video about it, about him and his writing. Where do I start besides the beginning? Less Than Zero is Bret Easton Ellis' first novel, and it is a masterpiece, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't like it. That could be said for all of his novels. But this one is one of his most controversial, probably because it's one of his most famous. It's about a college student, Clay, who returns home from college, obviously, to Los Angeles for the Christmas break of 1983 or 2, I think. And he sees his friends engage in debauchery and various forms of degeneracy and all those things which start with D's. He has an ex-girlfriend named Blair. He has a friend named Julian, who becomes a sex worker guy. It's very gritty and very dark. Very controversial. There's other characters such as Rip, the drug dealer, who is a vile person. The thing with Lesson Zero is that it's still very relevant despite being dated back to the 80s, as I feel like the teen culture is pretty much the same. It's been unchanged for a long time, and I feel like out of every book I've read about teenagers or young adult culture, although this isn't probably the most accurate, literally, it really captures that grittier, dirtier side of things, which very few other YA type things do, because I mean, it's not a young adult novel because YA is so considered so sanitized and boring and clean. And the worst thing about literature these days, in my opinion, is that so much of it is so sanitized and boring and clean. I'm not asking for satanic verses, offensive, causing a fatwa, but, it'd be nicer if people were willing to be a bit more, not necessarily edgy for the sake of it, but I feel like art in general, besides music, I think music, experimental music's quite big recently, Fantano, core type stuff. So, Lesson Zero is also a film adaptation in the late 1980s, and it's awful. It's really bad. Stars Andrew McCarthy as Clay, Jamie Gertz, I think you're saying that right, from The Lost Boys as Blair. Robert Downey Jr. is Julian, and he's very good in the movie, but he's kind of just playing himself, and they completely ruin everything that makes the book great. It's like the opposite of what you want the book to be. It is just stupid. It's like a bad John Hughes movie, and it just doesn't work at all. I'll link below a review I wrote on Letterboxd for the whole thing to get into specifics down there. It's a very, very bad movie that I think should be remade, or at least, the idea. I've written a script for it myself, but I mean, I isn't going to get made because I don't have the money or backing, and I can't bother to send it off because that's not how you get things made. You can't just be like a 20-year-old in his bedroom writing to Paramount or whatever, say, hey, would you make my screenplay? I'm not going to do that. But I think it has really good potential for like an 80s inspired, like that Stranger Things, those sort of like cultural, because still kind of people love the past. Showing the past was horrible, just like modern day. Make that, lure them in with like these young, like child stars, maybe teen stars, and then create the most depraved, disturbing teen movie ever made. As funny as that idea is, it most likely would not get made. And if it was to be made, it probably wouldn't get mainstream distribution. But if someone could make a movie like that and get it on Netflix or whatever, that would be the funniest thing, because it'd get review bombed by people who go in expecting something light or whatever, like a quirky teen coming of age thing, but it would be hilarious, just saying. Alice's next book is The Rules of Attraction from 1987. My favourite book of Alice's. I love this book. It's a story about college students, Sean, Paul, and Lauren, who are sort of in a love triangle, kind of. They don't really care, they don't really know what's going on, but no one does. Whereas in Lesson Zero, Clay is very much like a ghost. He's barely a protagonist. He just sees everything and has very little interaction with the world around him in terms of, having, he doesn't really do much. He's more of just a guide for us to, see things through his eyes. Rules of Attraction is much more humanist. It's got stronger characters, I'd say, and that is the one thing that Lesson Zero does get dragged down on. Clay isn't that good of a protagonist. He's just kind of there, but I feel like it's just such a cool book, it doesn't matter. It's not as bad as Imperial Bedrooms in terms of Clay, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, so Rules of Attraction is possibly his, plot lightest. There's so little to talk about without going in depth and spoilers, but it's funny, it's very dark, it's very irreverent, and it's got some great music references in there. Ellis is known for pop culture references in his books. If you've read his books, you'll know all the sorts of music that gets referenced. Off the top of my head, in Lesson Zero, he mentions Joan Jett, Blondie. In other books, he mentions Talking Heads, Bruce Springsteen, Generation X, The Jam, get a mention in Rules of Attraction, and The Smiths as well. I'm wearing a Smiths shirt, which is suiting because Bret Easton Ellis has been, I can't remember who called him this, I've heard him be called the literature Morrissey, which, if you know anything about Morrissey or Bret Easton Ellis, that says a lot. I think that's, very, very accurate. So Rules of Attraction also has a really good movie, directed by Roger Avery of Pulp Fiction co-writing fame and Tarantino's friend. I believe he co-wrote it. Anyway, he's Tarantino's mate. And it's very good. It stars James Van Der Beek from Dawson's Creek, and Ian Somerhalder from, I believe, was he in The Vampire Diaries, some Buffy ripoff, some vampire show, something like that. The guy with the funny eyes, very, very strong, cool eyes, but they're very unique, who's also apparently a massive dick in real life, I've heard. And Shannon Sossaman plays Lauren, who I don't really know from much else. She was in a movie called Risk Cutters, which I haven't seen, but that looks quite good. There's some other people in the movie. So, the lighting is going down because the sun is going down. Great, I'm left in darkness. Hang on, I'll just get this on. This is to explain the sudden shift in lighting, so no one's like, wait, why did the lighting suddenly change? And you're going to see my horrible face, probably. Ah! Oh, there we are. Next was The Informers. In terms of books that I've read, there's 3 books of his I haven't read, including The Shards. So this isn't a ranking video, this is simply me talking about an author I love very much. The Informers continues the sort of trend of Rules of Attraction, Lesson Zero, of these visceral, dark, seedy, scummy people who are young and listen to music and have sex. And it's a short story collection, so I didn't enjoy it that much. Essentially, The Informers feels like a compilation of outtakes from Lesson Zero and the Rules of Attraction, or just scrapped ideas. It doesn't have a sort of original feel to it, and it's the sort of book where after Alice's other ones, after kind of moved away from that setting. At the end of the day, The Informers is interesting. There's stuff about vampires in there and stuff, but there's also a lot of boring Lesson Zero outtake type material. And it's just one that I'd rank very low. If I was to do a ranking of Alice's books, I would have that one at the bottom. So, The Informers also had a movie, which I've never seen, but apparently is very bad. It stars Billy Bob Thornton, Mickey Rourke, Winona Ryder, and from one Johnny Depp, girlfriend to another. Amber Heard's in it too. And I believe Brad Renfro is in it, or he was cut out of it. He played the vampire, I think. If you've ever seen The Informers, I mean, just, let me know if it's worth watching or not. The second to last book of his that I've read is Glamorama, which is a dark psychological thriller about a character, Victor, from The Rules of Attraction. I wasn't just checking, I was just looking at the back. I knew his name's Victor. Kit Pardue plays him in the movie, I know him. He's Lauren's boyfriend, sort of, in The Rules of Attraction. Once again, you see what I mean if you read the book. This is a dark psychological thriller about a supermodel who is vain and is friends with all the famous people and then gets rolled up in a terrorist attack / terrorist organisation, and it goes insane. And I won't spoil it too much because I want you to go and explore these books yourself, because this is one of his best in terms of psychological. This is such a definitive move away from those early, teen type thing. I know American Psycho also was, but this is really where he creates this fast-paced thriller novel, which is full of intrigue and paranoia and conspiracy type stuff. And it also has a lot of good satire. The book is in two halves. The first half people don't like very much because it's basically just Victor walking around being vain and listing off famous people. There's a great little passage in here where it's simply just him and another character talking about who's invited to a party and a dinner, and it is just a bunch, for like 4 pages straight, them naming famous people. And you may think, well, that sounds really boring. But that's the point. The point is it's meant to show the monotony. Because Bret Easton Ellis is a writer who really, really likes annoying you. And that is one thing you will find when you read his books. He doesn't like the audience just being nonchalant and not caring. He really wants a reaction out of you. So to write something so intentionally kind of dull at the start, to then burst into this psychological thriller, that's his writing style. Though I will say, I really do like the opening. I don't think the first part is boring, but I just thought it was cool. It's like almost parody with how many things he references. It's almost a parody of the pop culture Bret Easton Ellis references. This one has never been made into a movie, and I don't think they could. It's very similar to Fight Club. If you've read or seen Fight Club, there's a Fight Clubby element to this book, which I won't go into. But if someone told me that this was a Chuck Palahniuk book, I totally would believe it. I would totally buy it because it's probably the least Ellis book and more like a Chuck Palahniuk type book. His final book I've read is Imperial Bedrooms, his most recent release before his brand new book. This is a sequel to Less Than Zero. It's very short, and it's a book I enjoyed while first reading. Is it that good? I don't know. A lot of people don't like this book. I didn't hate it because I just like Ellis's writing style, but the problem is, this is just too mean-spirited. I think what made Less Than Zero so good is that, it was dark and mean-spirited, there was still a sort of openness. There was a hope to it. The Clay was like barely there as a protagonist because he was sort of getting his life together. Sort of. Not really, but that was implied. Imperial Bedrooms completely screws away any of this. And Clay is really unlikable. He is made into a complete sleazebag, and I didn't like that. I really didn't like the choice to have Clay be so, dirty and disgusting. I get what Alice was going for, but this, movie producer Clay is just too different. I just feel like it's a good novel. It's a good detective-type novel, but it feels underwhelmed and underbaked, and I feel like he should have spent more time on it. Personally, and I sort of got the impression while reading it that he didn't actually like writing it. It didn't seem, I don't know, you can't really tell when he writes. I just noticed the angle's changed. Oh well, you can't really tell when he writes why he's writing a lot of the time because it's sort of like it comes up on you, the disturbingness or whatever. But Imperial Bedrooms, not that it felt like he was writing it for money, but it felt like he was writing it because he felt like obliged to, or just really is a piece of anger against the movie, which if you read the book, you'll understand what I mean by that. These two books I have not read. American Psycho, the only one I've got which doesn't fit into this main scheme of all of them, and Luna Park. You all know what American Psycho is. I've been putting off reading it because the movie I don't like. I think the movie isn't that good. I think the satire in the movie is so bad. It's it's not this fantastic satire. It's a satire a child could write. It's quite funny, but like seriously, this influx of memes about it and stuff and signifying it, I hated that. Which, it's more so actually made me see the flaws in the movie, because trust me, when you have a bunch of people who know nothing about art, trying to tell you, I'm gonna have to go down here, trying to tell you how American Psycho is this fantastic analogy for capitalism, and how it's actually super genius, and you didn't get that. It is so frustrating seeing. I think so many fans act like this isn't incredibly obvious as to what American Psycho is about, and they act like they're geniuses for it. It's just, I don't care how materialistic or whatever, not vain, but you know, how shallow it makes me seem. But when something has that much of a reputation, it's bound to affect my belief and my feelings towards the art. But then again, that says more about the art, because I still love Drive and I still love Taxi Driver. I think they're fantastic movies, and they've just been signified as well. I just don't think American Psycho is that good of a movie. I don't think it's a good movie at all. I think it's massively worn off. It was amazing and groundbreaking when I saw it as a 15-year-old getting into film. Did not care for it, and now I'm 20 years old. And Luna Park is a fictional autobiography, which sounds interesting, and I don't really know much besides I know the characters from his books are in it. So it's sort of like a mock taking the mick out of autobiographies, which that's a very Bret Easton Ellis thing to do. The final thing here is The Shards, which came in the mail post today. This book has a little signed thing here by Bret, and a very, very dapper looking Bret here, where he looks like a Philip Marlowe auditioner. He looks like he's ready to, on his way to a party with a long goodbye theme to it. That was such a strange reference. But The Shards is a vaguely autobiographical story about his time in 1981 in college as a senior at a prep school. And I believe it's about a relationship he has with another guy, and it's about a serial killer on the loose. I really don't know much about this book, and I cannot wait to read it, and when I read it, I'm going to do a review for it. But this book is just so cool. I was watching an interview he did with the Waterstones, and it's just cool to see an author you like writing again. The thing is with Ellis is that he's a very difficult person. I don't agree with everything he says. I think he can be quite arrogant and egotistical, and he has a real penchant for siding with like conservative commentators, despite the fact that if you read the guy's work, you know he isn't some stuffy conservative. He's either homosexual or bisexual for a start. He's definitely not straight. And I feel the reason he says a lot of the things he does is because he wants the reaction, because you can't look at the books of a man like this who wrote Less Than Zero and American Psycho and think, oh yeah, this guy totally isn't doing stuff just so we all get pissed off at him. And I honestly feel that's kind of what Bret Easton Ellis is. I do also think he is kind of full of himself. But he's a genius writer, and he's a writer who means a lot to me. So there you have it. That's a brief overview, a brief talk about Bret Easton Ellis' books. Still working out on what to do with this channel, and I say way too much. Once again, early days, professional eventually, hopefully. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to do whatever you want to do, because, I don't know, do whatever you want to do. Comment what's your favourite Bret Easton Ellis book. Comment your favourite word. I don't know. Like the video. Share it with people. Please, I need the money. I don't. But I'd appreciate, and I appreciate the support we've got so far. You guys are awesome for watching these videos. So let's hope the algorithm works in favour this time and sends this video out to people. Either way, until then, I'm Max. Stay beautiful.